And I want to thank everyone very much for taking the time to join us for this session today. We are trying very hard to be responsive during some very difficult times right now in light of the coronavirus. Our commission met on Friday, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead right now and share a PowerPoint that I have created for purposes of this session today. I know that there are no shortage of tutorials right now on how to use Zoom. I feel like my YouTube feed is just absolutely flooded with these tutorial sessions right now. This one we designed specifically to talk about how to facilitate counsel at first appearance, and we're going to keep this brief. This really is going to be very specific to compliance with MIDC Standard 4 during this pandemic, and how to use Zoom to hopefully facilitate having counsel be present at that first appearance and all critical stages that are still being conducted by trial courts. I borrowed heavily from a recent NAPD seminar on this topic, so I just want to thank, before we dive into this, I just want to thank the NAPD for hosting very important sessions around how to use Zoom to facilitate counsel being present, as well as a number of other training videos that they've offered lately, and specifically Kathleen Casey Gomez of the Texas Indigent Defense Commission. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank Judge Cynthia Walker of the 50th District Court in Pontiac. She and her staff, Ashley Johnson and Alicia Wilkerson, her court reporter, they took time on Friday to help us troubleshoot and answer some questions that we were having. They were just incredibly generous with their time, and we really couldn't have put this together without them. So I just want to thank Judge Walker and her team over in Pontiac. This session is going to be broken down into 6 basic sessions here. We're going to talk about the background and purpose, why we're doing this today, the objectives, setup and logistics of using Zoom, advocacy, practice, and questions. And I just wanted to point this out here in terms of the questions. Those will come at the end. I am going to ask, if possible, just in the interest of time and for me to be able to get through the materials within 30 minutes that we've allotted for this session, that you do hold your questions to the end. Nicole and Barb are going to be actively monitoring that chat box. If you have questions right away, go ahead and send them a message if you need to. We'll try to answer all of those. And if we don't answer the questions before the end of the session, we'll make sure that we circle back at the end. So beginning with the purpose here, of course, we know that due to the coronavirus, Michigan has been under a state of emergency declared by Governor Whitmer on March 10th, which was followed by an executive order directing Michigan residents to stay home and stay safe, with the exception of essential functions. And we know also that the Michigan Supreme Court has made clear that essential functions include arraignments for in-custody defendants, among other hearings that are specified in the Michigan Supreme Court's administrative order. I have a lot of these documents linked on our website if you want to take a look at michiganidc.gov, and the link directly here is at the bottom of this PowerPoint, which I'll be happy to share at the end of this session. Michigan Indigent Defense Commission Standard 4 requires counsel to be at these arraignments, and all systems statewide have a plan for compliance with the standard. Under those plans, in most cases, counsel must be present at those arraignments unless the defendant knowingly and intelligently waives their right to counsel. The Michigan Indigent Defense Commission met on Friday, and they made clear that the standards are still in effect, specifically Standards 2 and Standard 4. Standard 4 is what we're going to be spending the most time talking about today. I will have a link to the Commission's meeting via YouTube available on our website, hopefully later this week. But in the meantime, these were my notes from the session. We know that courts are able to use technology to conduct these hearings remotely, and we are urging systems, please, to reach out to your regional manager if you need to make any adjustments to your budget to facilitate these hearings being held remotely. We're here to help, okay? And the reason why we wanted to do this session today is so that we can make sure that anyone who's participating will learn how to use Zoom for court hearings to facilitate defense counsel's appearance and advocacy for their clients from a remote location. I'm going to go through a little bit of the setups and logistics of using Zoom. This assumes really that you already have a Zoom account. If you have not already set up a Zoom account, you can do so for free. And this assumes also that you've been logged in, that you're logged in here to your accounts. Before we get into actually scheduling the meeting, I want people to take a few minutes to review their settings. When you're logged into Zoom, you will see over to the left-hand side a space where you can navigate down below your profile to settings. You're going to want to check for the advanced settings, which you can either scroll to on this page or actually jump down to using that link. So when you're in the advanced meeting settings here, you're going to want to make sure that the breakout rooms are enabled. This is going to be something specific we're going to talk about later today in this session, where we're using these breakout rooms to facilitate attorneys meeting with their clients outside of the main meeting room there privately. Well, we hope privately. We'll talk about confidentiality as well. So they're going to be able to move to those breakout rooms and then back into the main session as long as this specific function is enabled in your Zoom settings. You might also want to, if you're interested in setting this up ahead of time, you can allow the host to actually specifically assign people to the breakout sessions even when they're scheduling a meeting. I like to keep that on. It's not something that I have used regularly, but it is a feature that allows you to do that. If you know exactly who's going to be participating, exactly how many breakout rooms you need, and exactly who you're going to put where, you might want to enable this feature as well. You can also schedule them, and I'll show you how you schedule those during the live meeting itself. So it's not critical, but it's a nice feature. So now we're back to actually scheduling this meeting. You're going to want to navigate back to the page where you're scheduling a meeting and fill out the topic and when the session is going to be held, the duration of the session too, just like how you would normally schedule a meeting. If you haven't already done this, there are many tutorials that can help show you how to schedule a meeting. And if you want, you're welcome to give me a call too. I'd be happy to talk you through this. It's relatively easy to schedule a meeting. When you're scheduling the meeting, you're going to want to make sure that you go down and enable all the features that you're going to need for this particular session. Again, this particular session envisions that we're setting up a court hearing with multiple participants. We're going to want to make sure that the host and participant have their video on, that they're able to use their video there. You're going to actually have to select those buttons there in the video settings. There are also some meeting options that are helpful, and I think really critical, that you might want to consider adding to. So one of the features here is enabling people to join before the host actually logs on. Sometimes people want to get in and they want to get acquainted with what this looks like, maybe before you actually start the meeting. So that's a nice feature to check on as well. A feature that we talked to Ashley Johnson about and Judge Walker last week has to do with the waiting rooms. I know they're using that waiting room setting. So what that's going to do when you enable the waiting room there, which I'm sure it's hard to see and I'm sorry for that, but it's actually the third option down, enable waiting room. What that's going to do is when you open the meeting, people will automatically be in that waiting room in the session so that you can manually add them into the main room when you're ready to have them in your Zoom meeting. And so that might be a nice way in terms of the virtual waiting room, having people outside of the court hearing that's going on if it's not relevant to their particular case. It's a feature that you might want to use. And then the other feature that we already talked about briefly is pre-assigning breakout rooms. You can either create the number of rooms that you know that you're going to need. If you know that you have 2 or 3 different lockups, people in different areas of the jail or a holding facility that you're going to want to access for Zoom, you can go ahead and create those rooms right then. Again, you can do this during the meeting itself. You don't have to set them up ahead of time or pre-assign, but it is an option. Recording the meeting automatically is also something that you can select here, but you can also, when you're in the meeting, decide to record the meeting as it happens as well. You can also choose to pause the recording at any time during the session. So here we've scheduled our meeting. You're going to want to copy the invitation and send it to the participants, or go ahead and start the meeting if you are ready to start right then. Assuming that you are scheduling a series of hearings or meetings ahead of time, what you're going to want to do then is go into your regular account when you're ready to start the particular session, choose the session that you would like to select, and hit start. That's going to open it up just like this. In this scenario, as I mentioned, I envisioned having people start in the waiting room. And if you can see it over here to the corner, this is what my host view looked like at the time. I had people waiting. I had a regional manager. Nicole was helping me that day. Nicole was extremely helpful and patient as we were navigating around this. Nicole was in the waiting room, as well as Ashley from 50th District Court. What we decided we should do is send a message to people in the group chat to let them know that we'd be calling their case shortly. The way that this looks for people who are actually waiting in the waiting room, it kind of looks like maybe they were forgotten about. It just says, you know, your meeting will start or you're in the waiting room. I can't remember exactly what it said, but it basically was just sort of like a blank screen indicating to people that they were on hold. From here, you can either admit one person at a time or admit everybody into the main session. And again, that might be helpful if you're not interested in calling everybody who's supposed to be on the record, everybody who's waiting. If they're not supposed to be necessarily in the courtroom hearing other things, you can leave people out, attorneys and clients in the virtual waiting room online, and call them when their case is ready. What we did here was Judge Walker, again, was very, very kind and generous with her time. She showed us how this would look from her vantage point. Judge Walker, obviously up in the corner there, the 50th District Court in Pontiac, room 204, and me and Nicole, we were participating. Judge Walker actually had to be the person to initiate this session. It didn't work for me to set up a Zoom account and tap into the court's Polycom. So actually they ended up using their Polycom system and sent me the invitation. During that session though, Judge Walker made me the co-host at one point, which is why I have some of these other features that a host would normally have at the bottom of the screen, including pausing and stopping the recording and scheduling breakout rooms as well. If you notice here for the participants, I can manage the participants, or you also probably have at the bottom of your screen the ability to see the different participants in the session. If you manage the participants and then minimize your screen, that little square frame up at the top, usually the participants will then appear over off to the right. That's how I tend to like to configure it as well. When I'm managing a Zoom session, it's actually the most helpful way for me to navigate around. You can also see all of the participants, who's recording, who's waiting. There are only a few participants here, but if you had a lengthy docket or a number of people participating in a meeting, we had over 100 people at our commission meeting the other day. This is a way that you can just quickly move through and see if somebody has either raised their hand, has indicated that they need to talk to you through the chat box feature, or alert you in some way to something going on. This is also a place over by the participants where you can allow somebody to record the session. If you're the host or the co-host, you can hover over a person's name and there are going to be some options there, and you can affirmatively allow somebody to record the session. The host has to enable that. A remote participant is not going to be able to automatically record a session, but if the host or co-host gives permission, then any other participants can record. And this is going to be very important, I think, for courts. If a judge was participating, maybe, for example, at her home or his home, and the court reporter might be in another location, you have a court administrator somewhere else too, the court is going to want to make sure that the court reporter is recording or has the ability to record the session. If you're the host, if the defense attorney is allowed to be the host to record the session, you're also going to want to give permission to probably the judge and the court reporter to record as well. Breakout rooms is the main piece that we wanted to spend some time talking about today. So when I want to schedule the breakout room session, I'm going to just click on the breakout rooms at the bottom here. This is where I can decide, if I haven't already pre-selected, I can select as many breakout rooms as I want. In this instance, I've just selected 3. And if I didn't already pre-assign them, I'm going to want to manually assign people to those breakout rooms. When you get to this, after you create the rooms, you're going to have the option to assign various participants to the different sessions themselves. And then the other piece that's important here under options, I want to make sure that everyone is aware of this piece here. I wasn't able to get a great screenshot of it, but the way that the options is going to work is when you select options, there are a few things that I want to make sure that you do. First, you're going to want to make sure that you move all participants into the breakout rooms automatically. And you want to be able to allow people to return to the main session at any time. The reason why you're going to want to move people into the breakout rooms automatically is because if you don't do that, then people have to actually click on the screen or click a button to be able to join the session. And we know that a lot of times people who are in custody are not allowed to touch the equipment. We don't want anybody getting in trouble. So you're just going to want to make sure that you can move people automatically to that session. If you're going to go ahead and close all of the breakout rooms to make sure that everybody gets back into the main session at the same time, you might want to think about giving them a countdown after you close that. So you can, do a countdown and they'll see it pop up on the screen that they've got 60 seconds left. For attorneys, when you're in the breakout room, this is what it's going to look like. Judge Walker went ahead and assigned Nicole and I to a breakout session. We moved off to the separate session by ourselves. I know the question is going to be, is it confidential? I've been seeing a lot of discussion about the confidentiality of Zoom and is this a great idea? I'm not an expert on this subject, and I'm certainly not an expert on Zoom data collection practices, but I will say when we moved into the session, after we got done, we went back into the main session and Judge Walker said she couldn't hear anything that we said. I think that as long as you're in the breakout session, you have the ability to see who else is in that session with you. So if somebody pops in, you would know it. You're still going to see how many participants are in that session. So if it's just the two of you, I would say it's safe to assume no one else is hearing you. Please keep in mind though, the host at any time can drop into a breakout session, and also the host can record. So if the host is recording and drops into your breakout session, it might get recorded. You will know when the person is there. Like I said, you will be able to see them. So that would be your cue, obviously, to stop talking. You also have the ability to ask for help and then bring the host into the session. And again, that would be, a good idea to stop the conversation and just make sure that who is participating and when that person leaves the session before you resume any communications. In terms of whether this is absolutely confidential, again, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an expert here, but I do know, that even though this isn't perfect, it's not a perfect system, that isn't a reason to not try it. So I would urge you to at least consider using these breakout rooms. If you're going to be conducting the hearings remotely by Zoom, ask to speak with your client, ask to go to these breakout rooms, and use this as an opportunity to discuss what you need to before you're on the record or even after. This is also an opportunity for you to share documents with your clients. If you have something that you want them to look at, you have the ability to do that as well through the share feature at the bottom of the screen. My tip here is if you're going to share a document with one of your clients, you want them to take a look at something, that you actually have that document open on your desktop beforehand rather than trying to minimize screens and open something and then getting back to it. If you go ahead and share, you'll be able to actually select the document that you want to share, and then that screen will be open just as my PowerPoint is open here today. Again, I know that this isn't perfect, but I think it's worth trying. When you are ready to leave the breakout session, you just hit the button that says Leave Breakout Room, and you'll be back in the main room there. A piece that I want to make sure that everybody is aware of, we talked about this maybe a little bit at the very beginning of the session, but it has to do with your microphones and being muted. You're going to want to make sure that when you return to that main session, attorneys in particular, please make sure that you're not muted. You'll know if you're muted because there will be a red line through that microphone icon that's to the bottom left of your screen. You can always unmute yourself, even temporarily, just by hitting the spacebar key on your keyboard. That's actually a really helpful trick. And when you release the spacebar, you'll go back to being muted as well. So I want to go ahead and do a quick practice here. This should only take a couple of minutes. If you just bear with me, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I see we have a lot of people participating. Thank you, everybody who's joined. I'm going to set up 2 rooms here and manually add. So I'm getting the screens right now that I had displayed before and creating the rooms. You probably can't see them. I'm just doing this myself right now. I'm going to assign an attorney and a defendant to each room. And the options button, I'm actually going to just close out that session after 3 minutes. You can return at any time, but I'm just going to set it for 3 minutes just in the interest of time here so that you can see the demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and open up those rooms now. So automatically, Attorney Wangler is going to go to a breakout room to talk with her client, Defendant Tomko, and Attorney Prentice Sau is going to move to a breakout room to talk to her client, Defendant Fenner. We're going to open those rooms right now. See you in a few minutes. Okay, so everyone right now, the attorney and clients have moved off to 2 separate breakout rooms. You can have up to 50 breakout rooms under your Zoom account. I don't know that there really would ever be a need for that. I can't imagine any place that has the capacity to have 50 different pieces of equipment around, but just so that you know, it does accommodate up to 50 breakout rooms during any session. I'm going to go ahead and just take a look here. I see a question about recording. So because I'm the host and I'm here in the main session, nothing is being recorded in those breakouts, not from my perspective anyway. And as I mentioned before, when Nicole and I moved off to a breakout room in the demonstration, when we returned, Judge Walker said she didn't hear anything that was going on. I don't know if there are any other questions, Nicole, while we have a minute. Anything else that I need to address?
Well, there is a question about whether Zoom is doing recording and whether Zoom would be discoverable. So like if, for example, Zoom records internally and then the prosecutor's office sends a subpoena and says, I want to know what happened during this breakout session. I want a copy of the recording.
I really don't know the answer to that.
I guess just to summarize, we believe that if a session is being recorded, the session does not record the breakout session.
Correct.
And we don't know if there's a third party that could be recording and whether it would be discoverable.
Correct. So those sessions should be closing out in just a minute or so, and they'll come back. They'll be able to discuss, whatever they need to before coming back on the record. And again, this is obviously just an abbreviated session, just so that you can see the functionality in the demonstration here. And we'll be able to ask them if they were able to hear us. And I certainly know I can't either hear or see Melissa, Susan, Steve, or Tom anymore. So do you see them at all, Nicole, on the screen? Right. So they've dropped off into a separate session. I hope this is giving some people some ideas about how these breakout rooms could be used, could be configured and used, certainly in a court hearing context, but then hopefully also, even if one person is a Zoom account manager, to be able to facilitate a number of breakout rooms for attorneys and clients in different spaces. I'm going to keep looking at the chat box here. The breakout room is closing in 56 seconds. They've been given 60 seconds to leave their rooms. They might be joining us on their own as well. And yes, I'll post this on our website too, along with the link to the Zoom has a help page specifically for breakout rooms that I recommend you taking a look at. It's been really helpful to me in learning about this new technology. Welcome everyone. It's really nice. Thank you so much everybody for taking the time to join today. Okay, so hopefully people will be coming back. Do we see, let's see. I haven't seen them come back yet, but hopefully they will be coming back any second.
Attorney Wangler and her client should both be back.
Okay, great. Thanks. How did it go, Melissa? Do you mind just giving us a 1-minute kind of debriefing of what you saw from your perspective and how it worked out?
Well, he confessed to me.
Great.
But the question, he had a great question, and the question is, who is the host? And is the host the person who is controlling who is coming in and out? And if that's a court person, they've got to be on the ball, right? I mean,
exactly. Right. So in this instance, I'm the host. And in our setup and demonstration that we did last week, Judge Walker's clerk, Ashley Johnson, was the host, as I recall. It was the court that was the host there. So, and I think in most instances, it's going to have to be that way because we were unsuccessful remoting into a court with me as, just me from my location. So the court needed to call me. But once that happened, they were able to make me the co-host. And then, yes, as the co-host, I was able to manage everything as though I was the host as well. So the main question I have is, you were able to move off to the side, talk with him, with your client, and then come back in the session. And all of that happened automatically without you having to click anything on your end. Is that correct, Melissa?
we got a message that said you're going to return to the main meeting in however many seconds, and we decided we were going to push the button and join 30 seconds early.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing that. Okay, Susan, are you back too? Susan, did I see Susan?
Yes, I am. We're back. I wrote it out and made the computer just shove me back into this room.
Okay, great. And that worked out okay without you or your client having to touch the screen in any way or click any buttons. Is that correct? Like, assuming that
That's correct. Both my client and I pushed no buttons and just waited for the computer to do its thing.
And did you have the option to share your screen if you wanted to show your client anything, to be able to share any documents?
Yes, I could have done that. I didn't practice that, but I could have done that.
Okay, great. And like I said, the best tip that I have there is to make sure that you have your documents open and available already in the background, so that all you have to do is just select the document that you want to share if you were in that setup with your client. For example, some discovery or whatever piece of paper that you might want to share. Okay, so thank you. Thank you very much for doing that demonstration. I'm going to leave it open to see if there are any other questions or concerns. But again, I wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today. I got through, I think, what I needed to on my end. Happy to open it up for any questions. And I'm also very happy to help in any way if I can be of assistance to you. I know I've said this already, I'm not a Zoom expert. I'm learning just the same way all of you are learning too about how to use this technology. But it has been, I think, pretty helpful to learn about these breakout sessions and given me a lot to think about as to how we can use these to facilitate meeting with our clients, as well as being on the record as we need to for these critical hearings that are still going on. Okay, great. I don't see any other questions. If there are, Nicole or Barb, anything I missed?
You had a request to go in to kind of do it again, but have you go into a breakout room just so people can see what it looks like when the host enters.
Okay. Who wants to do it? Anyone in particular?
I think Angela.
Okay. So I am going to add a breakout.
Tanya and Ram also want to go in.
Okay. I'm going to add a couple of people here. Okay. Angela, Ram, Tanya. Anyone else want to drop into a session? Obviously, this wouldn't be an attorney-client, but just for purposes of seeing what the breakout room looks like. Dawn?
Ebony?
Marla, I would just point out before you put them in there that guys, when you're in there, you can, there have been some privacy concerns about Zoom, right? But when you're in there, you can see that it's not recording. That session is not being recorded. And also B, you can still see the participants. If you're hovering at the bottom of the screen, you can see there are two, you and your client. So check that out when you go in the room.
Okay.
Marla Shante wanted to be added in the room as well, please.
Okay, sure. I'm not sure if this is also going to open those other breakout rooms. I can't see how to delete them right this second. But let me, Shante, I'll drop you in just a minute. I'm going to open these rooms, and then Susan and Steve, Melissa, Tom, if you end up being kicked out, you're welcome to come right back in or try out some other features as well.
And I guess I would just say it looks like Dawn and Nanette have their hands raised. I don't know if it's because they want to come in or if they have a different question.
I'm going to drop them over to Breakout Room 3. And so they have been moved off to the breakout rooms. You see the participants dropped over to the side. I'm going to go ahead right now and pop into one of those breakout rooms. And so as the host of the meeting, you see I was able to drop in, but you saw when I joined.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and leave.
I'm sharing.
You're welcome to join back into the main session anytime. Play around with various features.
We're trying to see. Oh, well, I see the picture.
Yeah, that's my screen.
All right,
Okay.
I'm leaving.
Yes, I'm leaving.
I can't get back in the session. When I moved to go to a different screen, it kicked me out.
Do you have leave breakout room at the bottom?
Yeah.
I don't even have, let's see, hold on one second. No, I just have, I can see Marla. Let's see.
At the bottom it should say leave breakout session to the right. If you don't see that, click on more. Does everybody have that option to leave the breakout session?
I do.
I'm working from an iPad, and it just you have to touch the screen, and up at the top left it says leave.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's leave the breakout room. And I'll also note, just for everybody, that Marla, when you joined, it's automatically recording because you were recording before.
You're right.
So just so everybody knows, and maybe when we go back into the other room, then everybody will note that if the host is recording and then pops in, this session is being recorded.
Yep. I'm going to return to the main session. Okay, everyone, thanks for your patience.
Marla, when everyone gets back, there is one request for you to show how to share a document.
Sure.
Holy smokes.
All right, everyone back?
Yes.
So I'm going to go back to, I'm going to share my screen actually here. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you should see a green arrow that says share. If you hover at the bottom, if you click on that, it's going to give you a window or application that you want to share that's already up on your desktop. This is why I recommended already having your document open. So in this instance, I'm just going to choose my PowerPoint again and share that. Does everyone see that I'm sharing my screen? So then when you're done sharing, you can go up to the top and choose stop share. So there's a green bar that has the meeting ID and then the stop share button as well. So that's why I'm able to move between a document that I'm sharing and then return to the main screen. I see some more questions. Okay. Anyone have anything else? I want to thank you again for taking the time today. I hope that this has been helpful. I hope you learned something. And I hope that it gives you a lot to think about as to how we can be using this technology.
I have a question.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when I was reading through the information on SCAO's website and looking into Zoom, because certain district courts are already up and running using this, and Tomko, are you online?
Yes, he is.
Okay, so
Yep, I'm here.
okay, so the issue is like when at the Macomb County Jail, for instance, these conversations that could be happening via electronic technology, do we have the capabilities within the budgets to like, this all is hooked up through Polycom from what I'm understanding in the court system. So the judges are called, there's Polycom option that's happening simultaneously with the Zoom. Is that correct, Marla?
Yeah, that's my understanding too of how it's working. That certainly was for 50th District Court. They called us.
Okay. So with that being said, in jurisdictions that are where you are having defense attorneys call in remotely and there's only Polycom options available, is Zoom able to talk to Polycom, or are they using this? Okay.
Yeah, so it's my understanding the Polycoms actually have the Zoom application, and that's where they initiated the conversation from, was on the court's end through their Polycom, through the Zoom application on their Polycom. I might be getting that wrong. Nicole, did you have a different understanding? But I think that that's how they explained it to us.
Yeah, they at least they wanted to go in through the Polycom. I don't know if it's because they wanted us to be on a larger camera or a larger screen, but the court did want to go in through the Polycom.
And it was really easy. I mean, it did happen, and they have that technology. All of the courts have that technology already. So it was just a matter of, me accepting the invitation and joining. And I will say, just because the court has, I think probably, some sort of, I assume some sort of premium account, that doesn't mean that you have to have a premium account either. You can be operating it through, you don't even have to have an account if you're just joining, but I would recommend you have an account so that you do have the same capabilities, but it can be the free version.
So the reason why I'm asking is because when I reached out to Southfield to see if there was a way to avoid having any attorneys go into a courthouse at all to do the arraignments, I was told that when the Supreme Court and SCAO had sent out information regarding Zoom to these courts, you had to opt in to tie the Zoom in with your Polycom, and some of them didn't do it. So 41B opted into doing this 6 months ago, and some of the courts were already enabled, but there was a lag time with SCAO and Jim Ewing to be able to help anybody else. Is that no longer the case and everyone has this functionality up and running?
I can't speak to where they're at in terms of the installation, but it's my understanding that they all have the capacity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, it looks like Ron has his hands up, and Angela noted that when you popped in as host, you were recording.
That's correct, yes. And I did that on purpose to show people how that would be working. Assuming that I was the host or the judge just popping in and had the recording on, they were able to see that at the top, just as probably everybody here can see up at the top that it still indicates that I'm recording this session. It followed me in there. A couple of questions. Ebony asked about the free. Barb took care of that. 40 minutes, yes. I think it's unlimited if it's one-on-one. It's when you add 3 or more participants that it will kick you off after 30 minutes. Ram, did you have something else too?
I did. I was just going to talk about the free Zoom versus the paid app for the Polycom.
Great.
If you are joining a meeting that was started with the Polycom system, you can use the free system. However, the free Zoom app. However, if you want to start a meeting, in particular in Tuscola County, we have a Polycom system in the jail. If I want to call the jail and say, hey, I need to talk to a particular inmate, I have to have a paid app. It's the pro version. And I sent this out to the group last week, and you have to get the H323 upgrade, which is it's about $65 to $70 a month, and that allows you to dial directly into a Polycom from the Zoom app.
Great, thank you for sharing that information. I only have the account where I think it's something like $15 a month. That's what I have, but. As I said, it was perfectly easy for Judge Walker to call me, and then I had all the same functionality. So, So Ram, you're muted. I don't know if you. That's okay. Sorry
about that.
That's
If the attorney is starting the meeting,
right,
then they have to have the $15 plus the H323 upgrade.
Okay.
And that was confirmed with Jim Ewing last week.
Great.
Prior to all this.
Thank you so much for confirming that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other?
Marla, I'm kind of curious. Has anybody communicated with a court through the Zoom cloud? Because if the court with its Polycom, if it uses that IP address and goes to the cloud, the Zoom cloud, all of us could join in there. Has anybody been using that at all? Or is any court using it?
I haven't heard, but I only just did the one test session last week, so I haven't heard of anything else. I think that this is the kind of thing that keeps evolving, and the more that we learn, I'm hoping to be able to provide an update in another week or so as well, hopefully with some success stories, but also, to be able to share and collaborate and troubleshoot around any challenges we might be having too. Like I said, I know that this isn't perfect, definitely has some limitations, and there are definitely some possibilities for a breach of confidentiality, but I don't think that means we shouldn't try. This is time to be creative and to be thinking about how we can still be doing a good job for our clients. And I think that this is a good solution, at least under the circumstances. It seems to be one of the better options. So I appreciate everybody's patience with us. We're continuing to learn as well. If there's anything else that we can be doing, please let us know, and please reach out to your regional managers to make sure that you have what you need in your budgets to be able to implement any changes that you might need.
Marla, there's a question from Austin Rowe about the court sending link. Right, please.
If you're using Zoom for an arraignment, will the court send a link? It's my understanding, Kelly, you might be able to speak to this, to how this worked in Wayne County, how they're sending out the dockets right now. Or Dawn, I'm sorry. Or Angela, maybe too. I'm sorry, I need to just pick on Kelly. Kelly, go ahead though, start, if you don't mind.
I know what they do in Third Circuit now is they're sending out a docket sheet, and it has the meeting number on the list next to the client's name. And so you just go on Zoom and ask you to enter your meeting number. You type in that, I think it's a nine-digit number. You type that in and you go right in. It was very, very simple.
And I know I saw a screenshot of it. There were a number of people participating in one of those arraignment dockets on Friday. Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody again. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for your patience, and thanks for doing such great work. I will be available if anybody has any questions or concerns or follow-ups, or like I said, please follow up with your regional manager if there's anything that you need. Have a great day, everybody.